Every monster myth you've ever heard has a real biological root, and some of these creatures were worse than the legend. You grew up hearing these stories. The serpent that swallowed men whole, the bird that hunted like something out of hell, the lizard the size of a car, the shark that might still be prowling the deep. History calls this folklore, exaggeration, primitive fear dressed up as legend. But what if it wasn't exaggeration at all? Over the next several minutes, we're digging up 12 creatures that actually walked, flew, or swam on this planet. Animals so massive, so lethal, or so bizarre that if one showed up at your window today, nobody would call it wildlife. They'd call it a monster. And at number one, we're going to reach the most famous predator of all time, the one whose extinction, even now, part of the scientific community refuses to consider settled. Picture, for a second, walking through a forest 300 million years ago, or swimming through a sea that existed before the dinosaurs. We've explored dozens of extinct eras on this channel, and none of them prepared us for what's on this list. The line between myth and paleontology is thinner than you think. Let's cross it. Number 12. Before it had a name, this creature would be described as an armored serpent the size of a small car, crawling between the trees of a primeval forest. We're on the coast of Northumberland, in the north of England, roughly 300 million years ago, the Carboniferous period. The air was different from what you're breathing right now, almost 50% more oxygen than today. And that single atmospheric detail is what let an arthropod grow to the size of a compact car. This is Arthropleura, a millipede over 8 feet long, weighing more than a grown adult. Picture dozens of legs moving in synchronized waves, a segmented body sliding between ferns taller than a house. It was probably harmless, feeding on decaying plant matter. But the size alone was enough to turn an insect into a nightmare. Here's the twist. In 2021, researchers at the University of Cambridge, led by Neil Davies, found a fossil even bigger than any catalogued before, suggesting Arthropleura could exceed 8.5 feet, making it the largest land arthropod ever recorded in Earth's history. The catch is climatic. As oxygen levels crashed at the end of the Carboniferous, the biological space that allowed this gigantism simply vanished. The same scale that made it possible is what condemned it. And that's just the appetizer. The next name on this list doesn't crawl. It hunts. And it's a mammal bigger than any wolf you've ever seen. Number 11. Picture a wolf the size of a large grizzly bear, with a skull as long as an adult's arm, strong enough to crush bone just to get at the marrow. This is Andrewsarchus mongoliensis, and almost everything we know about it comes from a single fossil, a skull found in 1923 in the Gobi Desert, Mongolia, during an expedition led by Roy Chapman Andrews for the American Museum of Natural History. It measured 33 inches, longer than the skull of an adult polar bear. From that one bone, researchers estimated a terrestrial carnivorous mammal weighing perhaps a ton, living 45 million years ago in the Eocene, when Asia's forests were still testing out life forms that would never repeat themselves. Here's the twist. Nobody is entirely sure what Andrewsarchus actually was. Some classify it near prehistoric relatives of wild boars. Others place it closer to the ancestors of whales. A family tree still argued over a century later. The catch is the near total absence of evidence itself. No other Andrewsarchus fossil has ever been found. It simply disappears from the fossil record without explanation, as if it existed just long enough to leave behind one skull and vanish, from land back to land. But this time, the monster had venom in its bite, and it may have shared the world with human beings. Number 10. A lizard the size of a passenger car, with a bite that could kill slowly through infection and hemorrhage, even after the prey escaped. This is Megalania, Varanus priscus, the largest monitor lizard that ever lived, roaming Australia during the Pleistocene. Conservative estimates put it around 16 feet long, longer than a compact car stretched from hood to bumper. A close relative of the Komodo dragon, but scaled up dramatically, likely equipped with venom glands capable of preventing prey's blood from clotting, just like its modern relative. One bite, and the rest was just a matter of time. Here's the twist. Megalania may have coexisted with the first humans to reach Australia, roughly 65,000 years ago, sharing a continent and possibly the same water sources with our own species. The catch: part of the scientific community argues Megalania was already extinct, or nearly so, before humans arrived, making the overlap weaker than the folklore suggests. Others point to Aboriginal oral traditions about a massive, devastating lizard as a possible cultural echo of a real encounter, passed down for millennia before any written record. From the ground in Australia, we head to the skies over the Americas, where a bird decided it didn't need to fly to become the most feared predator on the continent. Number 9. A flightless bird over 8 feet tall with an axe-shaped beak, running faster than any human, coming straight for you. This is Titanus walleri, part of the so-called terror birds, the Forus rhacidae, which ruled the top of South America's food chain for millions of years, on a continent nearly free of large mammalian predators. Titanus pulled off something rare. It crossed into what is now Florida and Texas during the Great American Biotic Interchange, when the Isthmus of Panama connected the two continents. Its beak didn't peck. It struck like a hatchet made of flesh and bone, immobilizing prey with a single blow to the head or spine. With no big cats or wolves competing for territory, this bird inherited a throne that, on any other continent, would belong to a mammal. Here's the twist. For decades, it was believed Titanus went extinct nearly 2 million years ago, outcompeted by the carnivorous mammals that crossed the same land bridge. But in 2005, a controversial study suggested fossils found in Texas indicated it may have survived until as recently as 15,000 years ago, possibly overlapping with the first humans on the continent. The catch came fast. Other researchers challenged the dating, citing geological contamination of the sediment layers. The debate never closed. From a bird that chose not to fly, we moved to a reptile that found rivers too small because its favorite prey was dinosaurs. Number 8. A 12-meter crocodile weighing as much as 2 African elephants, sitting motionless at a riverbank, waiting for dinosaurs that came to drink. This is Sarcosuchus imperator, nicknamed Super Croc, which lived roughly 110 million years ago in what is now Niger. Discovered by paleontologist Paul Sereno of the University of Chicago, its skull measured nearly 6 feet, practically the length of an adult human lying down. The largest living crocodile today, the saltwater crocodile, rarely exceeds 23 feet. Sarcosuchus was nearly twice that, capable of dragging a medium-sized herbivorous dinosaur into the water, the same way a modern crocodile drags a zebra off the African savanna. Here's the strange part. At the tip of its snout sat a bulbous, bony structure called a bulla, whose function still puzzles researchers. Enhanced smell? Sound amplification? No theory has been confirmed. The catch about its extinction is quieter than dramatic. There's no single event, no asteroid, no ice age. Gradual climatic and hydrological shifts altered the rivers it depended on, until the species simply couldn't sustain itself anymore. A giant that didn't die in a cataclysm, it just ran out, along with the river that fed it. From fresh water, we dive into the open ocean, where a creature was so strange that scientists spent nearly a century trying to figure out where its mouth actually was. Number 7. A spiral jaw, like a butcher's circular saw, turning inside the mouth of a marine predator. And for almost 100 years, nobody could say where that spiral actually sat. This is Helicoprion, which lived 270 million years ago in the Permian, a distant relative of modern sharks. What survived, in most fossils, was just that continuous whirl of ancient teeth, locked together like an ammonite shell made of blades. Cartilage doesn't fossilize well, and without the rest of the skeleton, scientists argued for decades. Was the spiral on the snout, like a horn, on the dorsal fin, hanging outside the mouth like a spinning trunk? Here's the twist. In 2013, paleontologist Leif Tapanila, using high-resolution CT scanning on a rare fossil, cracked the mystery. The spiral sat entirely inside the lower jaw, working like a conveyor belt of blades. Every bite rotated it slightly, exposing a fresh row of teeth, likely used to slice through squid and other soft-bodied prey. The catch: even after 2013, the animal's exact size, hunting behavior, and place in the Permian food chain are still debated, with length estimates ranging from 13 to 40 feet. Helicoprion didn't survive what's called the Great Dying, the end Permian extinction that wiped out more than 90% of all marine life on the planet, the largest mass extinction in Earth's history. If a 100-year anatomical mystery already sounds strange, wait until you meet the largest arthropod that ever existed. Number 6. A sea scorpion the size of an adult human, with claws bigger than a fighter's forearm, patrolling estuaries almost 400 million years ago. This is Jacalopterus rhenaniae, the largest arthropod ever recorded in Earth's history, bigger even than the Arthropleura that opened this list. It wasn't a peaceful land insect. It was an active marine predator, a eurypterid. The fossil that revealed its true scale, found in Germany and described in 2007, was a single claw measuring nearly 18 inches. From that alone, scientists calculated a body over 8 feet long. It lived in the Devonian, when oceans and estuaries still didn't have fish large enough to compete for the top of the food chain. In that ecological vacuum, an arthropod took the role that, in any other era, would belong to a vertebrate. Here's the twist. The same period that allowed this gigantism was also quietly producing its future competition. The Devonian is known as the Age of Fishes, when jawed fish began diversifying and growing rapidly all around it. The catch: giant eurypterids probably didn't vanish all at once. They were gradually outcompeted by rising fish diversity, losing ecological ground over millions of years until the whole group became rare and, eventually, extinct. And speaking of Devonian fish growing without limit, the next name on this list didn't have a single tooth, and it didn't need one. Number 5. An armored fish the size of a van, without a single tooth in its mouth, and still capable of biting harder than almost any animal ever measured by science. This is Dunkleosteus, a placoderm from the Devonian, somewhere between 20 and 30 feet long. Instead of teeth, it had razor-sharp, bony edges that self-sharpened with every bite, like a pair of garden shears that never dull. Biomechanical studies estimated its bite force at over 6,000 pounds per square inch at the jaw tips, comparable to a Tyrannosaurus rex, 150 million years before that animal even existed. Here's the disturbing part. Fossils show bite marks on the bones of other Dunkleosteus of the same species. Cannibalism, a predator so dominant, so completely unchallenged at the top of its food chain, that when food ran short, it turned on its own kind. The catch came from something bigger than it was. 359 million years ago, an extinction event called the Hagenberg Crisis struck the oceans, likely driven by a combination of climate cooling and plunging oxygen levels in the water. Placoderms as a group disappear from the fossil record after that. Not one survived. From the sea, we rise to the sky, to meet the largest animal that ever flew in Earth's history. And it was the size of a giraffe. Number 4. A winged creature with a 36-foot wingspan, wider than an F-16 fighter jet, launching off the ground as if gravity were merely a suggestion. This is Quetzalcoatlus northropi, the largest flying animal ever identified, from the end of the Cretaceous, discovered in 1971 in Texas by geology student Douglas Lawson, and named after the feathered serpent deity of Aztec mythology, a mythical monster naming a real one. Standing on all fours, because pterosaurs like this one walked on their folded wings, it stood roughly as tall as an adult giraffe. With its wings spread, it stretched past 30 feet, bigger than many small propeller planes. Here's the mystery. How did a 550-pound animal manage to launch off the ground without the running start small birds use? Researcher Michael Habib proposed that Quetzalcoatlus didn't take off like a bird. It launched like a pole vaulter, using all 4 limbs, including its folded wings, for an explosive leap powerful enough to let its wings take over mid-air. The catch came from geological history itself. It reigned until the asteroid impact that ended the Cretaceous 66 million years ago, wiping out not just the non-avian dinosaurs, but every last pterosaur, no exceptions. From the sky, we dive back into the ocean, where a 20-meter sea serpent fooled scientists for decades before revealing its true identity. Number 3. A sea serpent nearly 65 feet long, its body rippling through the water like a giant snake, exactly the kind of creature that would spawn maritime legends for generations. Except it wasn't a serpent. It wasn't even a reptile. This is Basilosaurus, king lizard, named in 1834 by naturalist Richard Harlan, who mistakenly classified it as a giant marine reptile. The error was later corrected by anatomist Richard Owen, who identified teeth and bone structure typical of mammals. It was a primitive whale. It lived 40 million years ago, in the Eocene, in seas that now correspond to Egypt and Alabama, where it's the state's official fossil. Its body was radically elongated, almost serpentine. Some researchers believe it swam more like a giant eel than a fast modern whale. In Egypt, there's even a valley packed with its skeletons. Wadi al-Hitan, the Valley of the Whales. Here's the twist. Basilosaurus still had tiny, vestigial hind legs, completely useless for locomotion. A direct leftover from land-walking ancestors that returned to the ocean over millions of years of evolution. Proof carved right into the skeleton that whales descend from mammals that once walked on solid ground. The catch: its extinction has no catastrophic cause. As the oceans cooled at the end of the Eocene, its lineage was gradually replaced by more efficient cetaceans, the direct ancestors of modern whales and dolphins. From the sea serpent that was actually a whale, we moved to a real serpent, the largest ever recorded. It swallowed crocodiles whole. Number 2. A snake the size of a school bus, too thick for an adult to wrap both arms around, sliding through a tropical swamp 60 million years ago. This is Titanoboa cerrejonensis, discovered in 2009 in an open-pit coal mine in Cerrejón, Colombia, by a team led by Jonathan Bloch and Carlos Jaramillo. Fossils suggest it reached up to 42 feet long, weighing over a ton, heavier than an adult rhinoceros, with a trunk wide enough to fill an entire doorway. The largest snake alive today, the green anaconda, rarely exceeds 23 feet. Here's the revealing part. Snakes are cold-blooded, which means their maximum size depends directly on the temperature of their environment. For a snake to reach Titanoboa's size, South America's tropical climate 60 million years ago had to be significantly hotter than any rainforest on the planet today. Its very existence works as a fossil thermometer for the planet. At that size, it swallowed prey that would sound unlikely for a snake today. Primitive crocodilians, whole, the same way a modern boa swallows a rodent. The catch: there was no single extinction event. As the planet cooled after the Paleocene, the biological space for a cold-blooded snake that size simply stopped existing. Its evolutionary descendants survive today, at a fraction of the original size. And if a snake the size of a school bus feels like the peak of prehistoric terror, brace yourself. Number 1 isn't just the biggest monster the Earth ever produced. It's the only one whose extinction part of the scientific world still refuses to call settled. Number 1. The most powerful predator the Earth's oceans ever produced. A shark so massive its jaws alone could swallow 2 grown adults standing side by side. This is Otodus megalodon. It existed roughly between 23 million and 3.6 million years ago, ruling oceans across the entire planet. Size estimates range between 50 and 65 feet. Its teeth, found by the thousands around the world, measure up to 7 inches, about the size of an adult's open palm. Researchers estimate its bite force at over 40,000 pounds per square inch, the strongest ever calculated for any animal in the history of life on Earth, surpassing even the Tyrannosaurus rex. Its main diet: adult whales, not calves, full-grown, medium-sized whales, attacked with bites capable of shearing through entire rib cages and spines. Here's the twist that turned this extinct animal into a global pop culture phenomenon. In 2013, Discovery Channel aired a fake documentary suggesting Megalodon might still be alive, hiding in unexplored ocean depths. The backlash was so intense that U.S. marine science authorities had to issue public statements denying any evidence of survival. The catch is firm. More than 99% of the ocean has already been mapped thoroughly enough to rule out a living population of predators that size without a single confirmed sighting, carcass, or biological record in decades of shipping traffic and satellite monitoring. But the debate over its extinction date is genuinely still open. A 2019 study, led by Robert Bosenecker, recalculated its extinction to roughly 3.6 million years ago, linking its disappearance to growing competition from a faster, more agile rival, the ancestral great white shark. Not the cold, not starvation. Another predator, nearly as lethal, slowly closing in on the same ecological space until there wasn't room for both. The greatest monster the ocean ever produced wasn't defeated by a catastrophe. It was outcompeted, slowly, by something almost as dangerous as itself. 12 creatures. 12 proofs that the monster was never pure invention. It was extreme biology, pushed to its absolute limits by a planet that was once hotter, more oxygen-rich, and infinitely more hostile than the world you know today. Every legend you've ever heard, the giant serpent, the killer bird, the colossal lizard, the shark that might still be out there, casts a real shadow somewhere in the rock, waiting to be dug up. Extinction didn't erase the monsters from Earth's history. It only erased them from our living memory. So maybe the right question isn't, did monsters exist? The right question is, how many others are still buried, waiting for the next fossil, the next study, the next scientific twist that rewrites everything we thought we knew? Do you still think we've already seen everything this planet ever produced? If this real bestiary hit you the way it hit us putting it together, drop a like, subscribe, and come back for the next one. Because the next predator we dig up could rewrite this entire list.